Green is great says, could our failure to share the gospel actually determine someone's salvation? Or will God provide the same opportunity somewhere else? I can't imagine we have control over each other's salvation. I think that this is a hard question to answer for a couple of reasons. One of them is that there isn't really one determiner of a person's salvation as far as like life experiences. We might think of it that way. I might think like when I was like 12 and a friend invited me to church, that was like the determiner of my salvation. But the truth is that there was a lot of other things that had already happened in my life that were contributing. There was other things that happened on my own that were contributing. There was the work of the Spirit that is hard to even have it put your finger on exactly where that was. And so, you know, if he had not invited me to church, what would my life be like today? I don't know for sure. And I can't wind back the clock and experiment like that. So there's a lot of determiners in a person receiving salvation. The chief determiner, and the one that the Bible focuses on the most, is actually not you sharing, but it's in them receiving. Now, I'm not saying that you sharing is not an important issue, and you should feel motivated to share, and you should feel like it makes a difference. But I just want to say that I think the chief determiner is the person's response to the gospel, right? Do they say yes or do they say no? So like, you know, let's say you have a grandpa who's like 73 and he's on his deathbed and you really are thinking, I want to share the gospel with him. There's a really good chance that in our culture that he has heard the gospel many, many times and has responded positive or negatively, whether you know it or not, to that message. And so let's say that you don't share with him and you're thinking, oh, it's all on me. I didn't take that one opportunity to share. I think this is becoming an unhealthy perspective as a Christian. But the flip side, the other unhealthy perspective would be to think that your sharing doesn't matter. Like, oh, well, and I've heard people say this to feel better about my lack of sharing the gospel or someone else's. I say, you know, nothing's going to change. Like whoever's going to get saved is going to get saved. And whether I share with people or not, nothing's going to change. And I think, okay, it's one thing to put everything on your shoulders. If you don't share with everybody, it's all your fault. It's something else to put nothing on your shoulders. And I think the Bible does something a little more in the middle, because it does call us to go out and preach the gospel, calls us to go out and share. So there's a responsibility, a weighty responsibility to share the gospel with others. That's true. There's the Ezekiel passage where God talks to Ezekiel, the prophet, and he tells him, Ezekiel, I've set you, and now he's a prophet. He's not just a normal Joe. He's a special prophet of God. I've set you like a watchman on the wall. Now in ancient cities, the watchman is there to warn when military comes like sneaking up at night and stuff. I've set you as a watchman on the wall. So if the enemy comes and you don't sound the horn, and then the city is attacked and people are killed, it's on you. But if you sound the horn and the city ignores you, it's on them. So I do think there is a measure of that. That passage is obviously not directly talking just about you personally sharing the gospel with that specific individual over there, right? But it gives a principle of here's how I'd apply it. If the Lord has called you to share the gospel with that person, that's super important. You should absolutely do it. Doesn't mean everything in the world revolves around you and everyone you share the gospel with, but there's definitely some sense of responsibility there. You finally said, I can't imagine we have control over other people's salvation or each other's salvation. And I agree. But you do have so you don't have control, but you have responsibility. Just like Ezekiel, he had a responsibility to tell them about the coming battle, right? The danger ahead. But they had the responsibility to respond. They had control over how they reacted to that. So we only have control over what we share. We don't have control over their response. And that's liberating to know that. You don't check mark all your little commitment people. I had this many commitments. I must have done good. It's like, I would just check mark. If you want to check mark something, check mark that you've shared the gospel. That was your job. I blew the horn. Yeah. So I'm sorry. I feel like my answer is a little bit insufficient here. I feel a little bit of tension on this topic, and I think it might be healthy that we do. So I kind of like to leave it there.